Now we've come to that point in your project when you're going to come up with your aim. Where are we going? What are we doing? You've gathered all these people around and we want to have a think about what on earth are we trying to achieve here. Now, the reality is that you will have some of the pieces of this before you even get to this point. I'm acutely aware, right? So chances are when you have brought people on board, you've said, hey, do you want to come on a team and organize a, I don't know, Christmas parade? You might have brought people on and said, oh, I want to create a team and we're going to do something about, I don't know, loneliness. So you've probably already got a few ideas, but the point of this process is to make sure that your aim will drive the project, that it will drive everything about the project. Okay? This is the kind of gold standard of what you're going to achieve. This aim is really, really important. It sits absolutely central to all of the work that you do. So it's worth taking some time, which is what I'm going to get you to do now, is to work with your team to take some time to either create an aim or finesse and kind of craft it so that it's really going to help you achieve what you're doing. All right, so get together with your team. Get a whiteboard, get a big space with some paper. I don't care, but you need to be able to write in a way that everybody can see. And you need to be able to write in a way that you can kind of move things around and rub things out. So find yourself a whiteboard or some butcher's paper and hopefully do this standing up so that everybody is looking at the same thing together. Okay, this makes a real difference for the way that you engage with the idea and the way that you engage with one another. And that's important. So in the middle, we're going to put aim. And let's have a think about the process. So the first thing you might want to do is assign yourself a scribe. Okay? So we've got a scribe, and the reason the scribe is important, now this person isn't writing on the whiteboard, this person is actually just taking notes on the way through. So what we know when we work with, I've done lots of this kind of work with groups, is that we'll try and craft an aim, and then someone will get all excited and go, oh my goodness, let's create a billy cart race. That's not an aim, but it's a cool idea. And so the scribe can hold on to those ideas and other things that you as a group want them to remember. So a really, really important job. Find yourself a scribe so that when the cool ideas that come up that are not connected to your aim come up, you can still record them but then move on and keep coming back to the aim. The other role that I want you to set up is the facilitator. Now this does not have to be the project leader. Okay, and that's really important. So just because someone invited you all in doesn't mean they're necessarily the person to stand at the front and go, okay, let's talk about this. And I know I've done some work through La Trobe where I've been asked to facilitate sessions for areas of the uni that were people, and so effectively the project leader was way, way, way above me, but they actually said, Brad, I would like you to facilitate this because we want a kind of consultative process. We want to hear what everybody has to say. So putting the right person in that facilitator role is important because that facilitator's job is to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and that you pull together this kind of solid picture of exactly what's going on. You get the wrong person, sometimes it's the project leader is the wrong person, you get the wrong person up the front, all they're going to do is go, okay, this is where we're going, and I'll just tell you. Whereas you as a group actually need to gather around this. Okay, so by now you should have a scribe allocated with some paper or I was going to say typewriter, or a computer to take notes, and a facilitator, someone who's going to stand up and walk you through this process. Now, what I would like you to do is think about what you're aiming for. What do you already know? So I'll give you an example. Let's say that I'm the project lead and I wanted to do something about social isolation, right? Okay, so I gathered you and I said, look, we've got an issue with people being isolated. So we know that. We're going to do something about social isolation. This is kind of one of the constraints. And then another constraint is we've said, look, we've got this opportunity over Easter. Okay, so Easter's coming up, and so while we don't have to do Easter, we would like to do something over Easter that would reduce social isolation. Okay, so now we have a bit of an idea. Now remember, like I said before, that when we talk about this, someone will butt in and go, oh, let's do a parade. Okay, dump it there and then tell them to stay on task. What's our aim? What's our aim? What's our aim? Okay, so now you need to think about what you're aiming for. Now, some people in the group might say, oh, maybe we could aim to, what's the big picture idea that everybody would have somebody to talk to at Easter? I'm not suggesting this is a good aim. It's not. And you write them down. So everybody would have someone to talk to, and then someone else says, but, okay, there's always a but person. Tell the but person to be quiet, okay? At the moment, we're just thinking broadly about ideas. We can do that later. And then someone else says, so someone asked the question, what do we mean by reducing isolation, okay? So reducing is getting rid of something. What are we actually talking about? We're actually talking about maybe creating connections. And then someone else pipes up and asks the question for who, and this is really important. Okay? And then we have a discussion about that, about who has an issue with social isolation, and perhaps we're also thinking about the organization that we're working in. And then we go, okay, well, maybe the social isolation is the elderly. And someone else says, and this is why it's a discussion, and we keep mapping these things out, someone else says, okay, the elderly, but not all of the elderly are lonely, particularly not at Easter. So maybe it's a certain group of lonely elderly people, okay? And then we talk about this idea of disconnected. Okay, you can go on forever, but we're trying to get an idea. So you can see already we're starting to craft this, and I'll be honest, I'm making this story up as I go. So we had this broad idea about social isolation, something about somebody to talk to, creating connections, and so we're starting to think about who. Now our aim is to create something at Easter. And then we have a chat about, are we talking about an event, a one-off event, or are we talking about a program of things, or are we talking about some kind of process? And maybe the people in the group go, oh, maybe we could create an event that would reduce social isolation. So it's not to say that this is the only way to reduce social isolation, but it's about saying, okay, what are we aiming for? And so then we say, okay, we're going to create an event that increases, so let's not worry about reducing, that increases connections for the elderly and lonely, okay? Now, this process of crafting, we can get more and more specific. We don't have to set goals at this point. It's just about what does this big picture thing look like, right? So we're going, what are we aiming for? Now, we're thinking about what's the story that we want to tell afterwards. Now, if we tell a story that says we ran an event at Easter and it created opportunity, it created connections between a bunch, we don't have to be specific at this point, that's goals, a bunch of elderly people who reported that they were previously lonely. Now that's kind of cool, right? So it's kind of interesting, it's a good outcome. And so you craft a sentence that captures this broad aim. Now I've used this example. You can actually come up with a better example than this, with a better, real life scenario than this. And so we've got this aim that says we're going to create an Easter event that creates connections between lonely elderly people. Okay? Now, once you've done that, once you're reasonably happy, once the people in the room are going, yeah, I can get behind that. Because remember, it's the people in the room that have to make this happen. So this sentence that you create has to inspire them. Okay? Remembering back to the previous video that was talking about what your aim is and all of that kind of thing, this sentence has to inspire them. And so what we're doing is you're going to ask a few questions. Okay, so is it complete? This should be a revision for you. Is it complete? Okay, is this idea complete? If I talk about an event, is that a thing? Okay, is it one thing? Is it something that I can get my head around? Is it complex enough? There's no point you saying that our aim as a group is to create lunch for Betsy down the road, because you can do that on your own. You don't need a team to do it. Is it significant? Okay, is this actually going to make a difference? Are there opportunities to learn? Okay, is this going to stretch us because it's in learning that we actually have a lot of fun, right? And finally, is there enough autonomy? So does this project allow the project leader to say, this is where we're going to go. We want to create an event that creates connection between elderly people. How do you think we're going to get there? Okay? So it's really important to have that autonomy so that everybody can get excited about their bit, right? So people need to get excited about it in order to achieve these kind of high-level objectives. Now, if you have a project that fulfills these objectives, what you will find is that your teamwork becomes easier because it's clear. You know exactly what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with an Easter event where elderly, lonely people stop being lonely, where they start making connections with one another. The fact that it's complex means that you're going to have to work together, that it's actually really beneficial for you to work with that person who's really different from you, and that's really important. It is significant because connecting people is incredibly significant. There is learning involved because it's stretching enough. And there's autonomy. So I can go away and go, oh, I've got this great idea about how we can use food to connect elderly people together. Okay? So making sure that your aim fulfills these objectives is a really important part of developing an effective team, but more importantly, a really effective part of changing the world a little bit. So spend some time. It's a really good one to have afternoon tea over and chat about. Come up with something that every single person in the room goes, I can get behind this, I can put some effort in, and you will change the world a little bit.